play the B chord. There's B, turns out there's B with the 5th on top. There's B with the 7th on top, root. There's B with the root on top. B with the 3rd on top, right? So a whole lot of stuff going on with those 3 chords when you get all those voicings together, all right? Now I'm going to play one more example of a blues using those different chord voicings, and I'll be playing exactly what I just showed you for the E, the A, and the B chord, and just tying them together so you can get an idea how it sounds. 2, 3, 4. Got up there in the stratosphere a little bit, huh? Now we started off with some familiar territory, E, going down that half step. Now I explained that as a quick change. Even though I'm not changing the bass note, it's still implying the A chord. Hey, you know, we're among friends here. So there's your quick change, back to E. Now instead of going down, I went up. Right? Connecting by half steps up to that E chord there. Now, when I go to my A chord, I could go either to this one or I could go to this one. I chose to go to this one. As you learn these shapes and see how the 1 chord, 4 chord, and 5 chord are related, you can start making these choices yourself. So I went up to the A chord, used the same idea, half steps, back to the E chord. Right? Now, here comes the B chord, and this time, rather than jump all the way back down low and play that open B7 as I have in the past, I decided I'm going to take a chance here and play B up in the same neighborhood. And the one that turns out to be right next door, if I go from E to B, is that one right there. This little 3-note shape here. We know this one. Here's the E, same shape. The B, right here. So it's the B7 chord with the 3rd on top. I played that. Back to A. Now on the B chord, there's no bass note that you can really hit. That's okay. Nobody's going to miss it, right? It's so exciting anyway. There's the A. Now I played the same shape that I've been playing on the E, the turnaround lick, but this time played in A, down in half steps. Going to the A major triad, and then the familiar turnaround, B7, back to the root. Now this is a style of playing that isn't new. Using chords, moving around the neck, connecting the chords melodically. It's been around for a long time, and there was a guitar player who did a lot of very influential recordings in the 1920s. His name was Lonnie Johnson. He recorded right up until the 1960s, but the best known stuff was from the 20s, and it was very melodic, moving up and down the neck, and he influenced everybody. Robert Johnson, T-Bone Walker, B.B. King, right on down the line. So if you haven't heard of Lonnie Johnson, you should go check it out, because he's a guy you want to listen to. Now that's a sound that everybody instantly recognizes as blues, and a big reason for that is that I'm playing melodies using the blues scale, and once again in the key of E, taking advantage of those open strings. So I'm going to show you some licks in the blues scale in the key of E. If you want to expand and be able to play all over the neck using different patterns, I suggest you check out some electric guitar videos that concentrate more on those ideas. But in blues, especially acoustic blues, you're going to tend to play most of your stuff right down around the nut. Okay, so that's where we're going to stay. Now, let me show you first of all the scale itself, and then we'll immediately put it to work. The blues scale has, well, it has 5 notes in it with an extra note that people use a lot. I'll show you the first 5. It's called a pentatonic scale, E pentatonic. Here's E on the 4th string, open G, 2nd fret, open B, 3rd fret, open E. That's the octave. That's 5 different notes, then you get to the octave. That's number 6. Back down. Now you notice I'm not being too fancy with my fingering. You don't need to be. You don't want to be. You want to get a good grip on it. So my thumb's over the top. Right? Hold it like a baseball bat, the way a guitar should be held as far as I'm concerned. As far as the right hand is concerned, it's alternate picking. Again, in blues, you don't have to get too tricky with the picking. A lot of players will even play mostly downstrokes. That's okay. It's the feel we're after. All right? Now, the extra note that I was talking about is this one. All right? That's called the flat 5. 1, this is the minor 3rd, the 4th, the flatted 5th, or the sharp 4. Call it either one. We'll call it flat 5. And then the 5th. That really sounds bluesy. That's a blue note, right? When they talk about the blues scale, the blues sound, that's a blue note right there. Right? So now you got the E blues scale. One other note that everybody plays up on top is that G. And not only that, you bend it. Bend that 2nd string too. It's these little subtleties that make it sound like blues. Now here's a phrase using the E blues scale. Right. All I'm doing is playing the notes of the scale and giving it that little shuffle rhythm. Right. Bend that first note a little bit. That's a pull-off. Then you can add in the notes of the chord as we have in the past, right? So you're still getting the sound of the harmony mixed in with the melody, but now there's more melody as we add more notes to the scale, all right? Now I'll show you a couple of common phrases that people use, things that I was doing just a minute ago when I was playing. Right? That's a little trick lick that everybody uses. And that involves actually 2 different moves. One is a hammer-on, and then a pull-off, and another pull-off before you land on the bottom note. So pick it once, hammer, pull, pull, and then pick the next string. It's what they sometimes call a turn. In other words, it sort of turns the corner and goes back on itself. And it's the kind of thing that you can add to a phrase to make it sound real bluesy. Right. Here's another one. Now, this one is a real nice one because it's almost like a chord. You're playing 2 notes together. 4th fret on the 3rd string, 3rd fret on the 2nd string. And notice how I'm sliding in there like that. Now this is another blues phrase here, where you pick the note and then slide it, and then pull off. So right now in the key of E, we've got some pretty traditional sounding stuff. That last phrase there was a variation. Now you can continue that pattern down into the lower octave, starting with the low E string. Here's the pentatonic scale. Third finger, open, second, open, second, back down. Now the flat 5. Let's play with the first finger. Now, because the fingering is different down in there, you don't have the same turns and phrases exactly, but you can kind of improvise around that. All right, there's a version of the turn. In that case, it's open string, hammer, pull, and give that note a little tug as well. Now those phrases down on the low end, those are kind of in the style of a lot of Chicago blues players, Muddy Waters among them. You can get a lot of mileage out of the low strings. If you put the high and the low strings together, you can get sort of what they call a call and response. Play a lick up high, play a lick down low. Right? You get the idea. Now, if you want to use the blues scale and play a 12-bar blues, we're in the key of E, but we have two other chords, the A chord and the B chord. So the question is, do you have to change scales when you change chords? And the answer is no, you don't. The blues scale will fit over all of the chords. When you're playing the chords, of course, and using different voicings like we've been doing, every time the chords change, you have to think of the new chord and find the right shape. But the magic of this style of playing down on the low end is that you can play the new chord and then go back to the old scale. Check it out. All right, blues in E. Now you hear the other chords, the A chord and the B chord, mainly because I'm playing the bass note on the A chord. Right? And it helps if you kind of play around the notes of the A chord. But really I'm using the E blues scale as the glue that holds the whole thing together. Now to prove that that scale fits over all three chords, check it out. I'm going to play one lick and I'm going to change the chords underneath the lick, but the lick is all from the E blues scale. Sounds like this. Here's A. B. Show you one more thing here. This is something that is a real down-home lick. It goes like this. We'll take it from the 5 chord. Right, now what I did there, I had the 5 chord. I played the A. And then back to the open position. The new sound was this up here. First finger at the 7th fret. Second finger at the 8th fret. And bend that second string just a little bit. That's a real down-home sound. You can use that on the E chord. You can use it anywhere in the progression. Then I go right back down low again. There's a famous tune that uses that in the intro. It's called That's All Right. And tune recorded by Muddy Waters guitar player Jimmy Rogers, blues classic. familiar sound. We've actually played most of the stuff that I just did there, and you've heard it 1,000 times, I'm sure. But the difference is I was keeping time for myself on the bass notes while playing the melody notes. In other words, I was finger picking. Now, this video is not intended to be a method for finger picking, but I'm going to show you enough to get you started in blues. And it's a pretty basic approach, and it concentrates, as everything else we've done, on rhythm. All right? Here's how you do it. I'm using a flat pick, and I talked back at the beginning about the different options for picking, thumb picks, thumb and fingers. You can do finger picking, obviously, with the bare thumb and the finger. I like the flat pick because, first of all, I'm used to it. I use it whenever I play the guitar. And secondly, it gives me a nice, thick sound on the bass, right? Lots of definition. You can really hear the notes. If I play with my thumb like this, it's kind of quiet. Playing with the pick, you really hear the note pop out, right? Now, what I'm playing here is a technique that's called, by some people, hybrid picking. That means combination of the pick and fingers. Now, I'm holding the pick just the way everybody normally holds a pick, right? Thumb and first finger. And I'm using it to play all downstrokes on the low E string. And then, with my bare second and third fingers, I'm playing notes on the higher strings. And there's no law about which finger you use on which string. You just sort of work it out, all right? So here's how you get started. First thing we're going to do is play a shuffle on that low E, like this. Real slow. Okay? Now, use your third finger. I'm holding an E chord, but I'm not actually going to play the notes of the chord. I'm just going to use the high E string and go like this. Got that? Now, the tendency is going to be that you're going to want to stop picking when you pluck that note. But the whole trick is to keep picking even while you're playing the high note. Now on every beat. All right. Now I'm going to play in sync with the bass note. That's probably the easiest in a way because they're both doing the same thing. Now, here's a trick. I'm playing opposite the bass. Real slow. Now hit the downbeat, then the middle part of the triplet is with the finger, but the shuffle is still being played with the pick. Now, all the stuff you hear in different blues licks is combinations of being on the beat or off the beat, like this. That's the basic technique, and it really doesn't get any more complicated than that in the right hand. The only difference is that you start moving across the neck and playing different notes in your left hand, and you have to stay coordinated. So for instance, here's a way to get started with your melodies, is take the blues scale and play the blues scale using a steady bass note. The note stays the same, the melody changes, and you notice I'm using second and third fingers, and I'm not being too particular about which one I use, as long as I can just hit the note. All right? Now check this out. I'm using phrases that we learned earlier and adding them together with the finger picking idea to make a complete self-accompanied rhythm pattern. Now let's play some of that Muddy Waters blues. This is a style of playing that Muddy Waters didn't invent, but he certainly popularized. He was recorded back in, I think it was 1942, if I'm not mistaken, by Alan Lomax for the Library of Congress. He was playing in his cabin on Stovall's plantation, and he played a couple of blues songs that he later recorded for Chess Records, and they used this similar style of playing, self-accompanied. He learned it from people like Son House and Robert Johnson himself. It's a long tradition. So we're going to take the ideas that I showed you about one-note bass and then finger-picking the melody, and we're going to apply it to a 12-bar progression. See what it sounds like. Here's a taste of it, and then I'll show you what we're doing. All right? Here we go. Keep going and going, right? Now, what I did there on the E chord is same thing I showed you, one-note bass playing different phrases. The tricky part here, as I said, is to keep the time steady while playing different rhythms with the left hand, right? So those little turns. Right, now check out the fingering on that. This is very important. Notice where the phrase starts. The turn starts on the beat. And the fast notes, the da-da-da-da, is actually right on time. You know, it's not just a random set of notes. They da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. There's a definite rhythm to it. So as you learn a new phrase, you want to break it down and know where it fits in the beat. And that means you're going very slowly and working your way up. So, for instance, key of E. Now, in this case, when I went to this phrase, I went ahead and let the bass note go to a triplet as well. So I'm actually playing 3 notes together, all in the same rhythm, bass note and the fingers. Then go back to the shuffle. You don't have to be too religious about the bass figure. It should be steady. It should be a shuffle most of the time. But if you change a beat here or there without changing the rhythm, then you're okay. Because Muddy did it, I do it, everybody does it. It's okay. There'll be none the wiser. Just keep that beat going. All right? So we got our E chord with a couple of licks. Now the A chord. We've already learned that melody. We played it several times in the context of the chord and independently as well. Now we're using the open A string. Right? And you see the only thing that's changed is the placement of the pick on the 5th string instead of the 6th string. Back to E. On the B chord again, I'm using Old Reliable. I got my B7 shape, and I'm just going to keep hammering that bass note. Nothing fancy about it. Right? And then back to A. Now, the only thing I'm missing to make this a full Muddy Waters blues is the Muddy Waters turnaround. Here's the Muddy Waters turnaround. These two notes right here. Second finger on the 5th string of the 2nd fret, first finger, 3rd string, 1st fret. Move it right up. Now, you can flat pick the first part of it, but then you need to use the picking fingers to pick the last one. Another variation, it's a nice one. There you're picking the pick on the 5th string, the 2nd finger is plucking the 3rd string, and the 3rd finger is plucking the open E string. Right. Now in context, it'll sound like this. Starts on the 2nd beat, as all these turnarounds do, right? So 5 chord, 4 chord, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And I'm doing an extra little note in the run up to the 5 chord. Start with the F sharp, open, and then play your B7 chord. And with that turnaround, with that run up to the 5 chord, and with all the little finger picking I'm showing you, you get some really authentic, down-home Muddy Waters blues. Now that's a tricky little blues in the key of A that combines some of the stylistic trademarks of Texas blues guitar player Lightnin' Hopkins with a turnaround that was a trademark of Robert Johnson. So we're really going back in blues history with this one. Now playing in the key of A and playing in the key of E really involve the same identical techniques. We're not getting into sophisticated finger picking at this point. We're just talking about the one note bass and then playing the melody up above. So the only thing that really changes is my left hand. I'm playing different shapes, but my right hand's doing the same technique. So now playing my shuffle pattern on the A, and I'm holding my A7 chord here. This is the one that gives me access to the high note and the blues scale. Now this is the way that a lot of country blues players play this A chord, because using one finger means that you've got the other 3 fingers free to play melodies. Now I started off by playing a Lightnin' Hopkins lick. That is a tricky little phrase, and what it involves is a 4th finger bar, and then you play the 1st finger bar. It's just letting that 1st finger hang over the 1st string there. And then a little trill. A trill is a hammer-on pull-off. Just do it as fast as you can. And then back to the 2nd string. And then bar again with that finger down to the root. If that one's too tricky, here's a slightly easier variation that you can use to work up to it. Right, it's a little bit more scale-wise, so you don't have to bar so much with your 4th finger. Right? It has basically the same sound. Right? So there I'm barring, then playing the 7th, then down the scale. When I go to the D chord, This is the variation on the D chord that was talked about in the introductory video. This is a D chord with a third in the bass. In other words, the third degree of the D chord is down here. F sharp, open D, fourth string, A on the third string, another D on the second string, and then with the index finger at the first fret, you can play the seventh. So you can lift up your fourth finger, and you get a D7 chord. And once again, just keep that note going while you play your rhythms against it. Back to A. Now E. Here I'm holding the chord down and just adding my other fingers as I have before for embellishments. Walk up to the D with the F sharp in the bass. And now I'm ready for my Robert Johnson turnaround. Now this is I like this turnaround. I use this one a lot. Here, I'll show you the easiest, the most efficient way to finger it. Sometimes when you're in a hurry, you just grab what you can, but this is the best way to do it. Fourth finger on the top, first finger on the fourth string, and you have to finger pick this one. So pick is going to be on the fourth string, and the second finger is going to pluck the top note. Move your index finger down like that. Again, it starts on the second beat, so 3, 4, 1. Now we go to the 5 chord, which in the key of A is E. Right, I play my little turn there, not officially the turn, but my embellishment. And back to A. All right. Let's play the whole 12-bar progression using the lightning lick with the D chord, third in the bass, and then the Robert Johnson turnaround. All right, here we go. 2, 3, 4. That ending, by the way, is the Lightning Hopkins ending. Half the time you'd never know he was going to end the song until he played that lick, and then it was all over. So had to be ready to stop on a dime. So now you got blues in A, you got blues in E, you got open position scales. You can play chords up and down the neck. I think you got enough for this one right here. That's enough for me. That's about everything I know. So it's been a pleasure sharing this stuff with you. There is more to do in the field of acoustic blues. You can get more into finger picking. That's the subject of other videos by other people. And it gets very sophisticated. Actual Robert Johnson style finger picking is very sophisticated in the way that he played different tempos while singing, which is no small feat. Playing in different keys. You can use a capo if you need to change keys, of course, which is another thing that Robert Johnson did. So there's a long-standing tradition of finger picking, different styles of melodies, different chord voicings moving up and down. But right now you've got all the basics to keep you busy for quite a while. And this is the essence of acoustic blues playing right here. So hope you've had a good time. I want to take it on out.